Good morning, everyone. This is Julie McDonald with Microcom Technologies, and I'd like to thank all of you for attending today's webinar with Aruba Instant On. Today's host is Reggie Johnson, and he is their channel systems engineer here in North America, and he'll be presenting today. If anyone has any questions, please submit them in the question box, and Reggie will answer them at the end of today's presentation. Reggie, thank you so much again for joining Microcom for yet another wonderful and informative webinar. I am looking forward to it, and I'm finished for now, so we can go ahead and take it on over.
Great. Thanks a lot, Julie. Hi, guys. Hope everyone is doing well. So, as Julie said, I'm going to talk to you guys today about our Aruba Instant On management. Notice it says network management made easy for SMB. So I'm actually going to do something a little bit different today. I'm actually going to demo. I'm going to walk you through some basic setup of the product. All right, and then I'm going to it says as it says here in the agenda. So I'll show you the topology. I'll walk you through a setup and kind of how that works. Creating different types of networks, your primary network, your guest network. I'll set up some basic security functions. Hopefully we'll have time. I'll show you how to set up mesh Wi-Fi, and I'll kind of talk through some of these things as I'm going through it. Now, if anybody wants any additional product information, the last couple webinars that I've done that have been recorded actually cover the product specifically. This is going to be obviously there's going to be product in the demo, of course, but this is going to be focused on the actually setup and actually management of the product. And this is something I haven't done. I've never showed you guys the actual interface and how simple Instant On is. So for my demo topology, it's going to look something like this. So I've got an Aruba gateway firewall that's actually not a part of the Instant On family. We do have the 11D, that does have that function typically for smaller environments. So we'll talk a little bit about that as I kind of go through the setup. So what I've done, I got a firewall already set up with internet access. And then I've got all these devices actually connected together, right, prior to actually being configured. And when these devices are put on the network, they need to have access to the internet to communicate with the Aruba Instant On cloud. So what I've done is I've already cabled everything, of course, except the mesh link. And if we get to actually setting that up, it's obviously just going to be plugged into the wall, and it's going to associate back to the wired network. And I'll go through that and exactly how that's done. But this is my basic setup using this variety of products here. Our 1930 switch, an 1830 switch, a 1960 switch. Actually, there are two of those because they actually stack, and I actually already have them set up in a stack. Our AP15 wireless access point that would be wired, and the 11D is going to associate to that over a wireless link. So in the initial setup, this is just some good basic troubleshooting information in the beginning. If you happen to be setting one of these up, if you got no lights, that means your device probably has no power. So you might want to check and make sure it's getting power. Solid red means the device has an issue. Kind of the same thing with solid amber. That means it's detected some type of problem, right? So one of the initial setup dependencies not being fulfilled. So just a couple of slides here. You guys will have these for reference. I'll add these as well. But I want to get into really sharing the interface with you and the different types of management. So there are two ways that the product can be managed. It can be managed using the app on the mobile phone, and that's what you see here. And then the other option is actually through your actual web browser by going to portal.arubainstanton.com. You'll notice now I actually go ahead and log in here. In this one, I've got my login already set up. If you want to create an account, it's real simple to create an account. You click on create an account here. You put in your email information, set up your password, two-factor authentication, etc., and then that gets you started managing the product this way. On your mobile, whether or not you got Android, iOS, you go and you download the application. Now, what I'm going to do is I got two-factor authentication set up, so I'm going to put in my two-factor authentication code using my Google Authenticator here on my mobile phone, and I'm going to type in the my one-time password here and get me logged in there. So you can see the exact same thing is here. It's a very similar look and feel as we've got in the mobile app when I get back to it. It's the same look and feel. You got the multiple quadrants, etc. So as I said, so basically, and this is showing a site that's already set up. So when you do the initial setup on the phone, what happens is you actually go to set up your, after you set up your email address and everything, it's going to ask you to set up a site. And so that would be simply setting up a new site as you see here. And I'm going to click on that. And so there's a little bit of hesitation. You guys aren't seeing the same screen that I'm seeing. Oh, there we go. A little bit of a delay here. So you notice it says setting up a new site, and this is what it looks like. It says the site groups your network and devices all together. So you're setting up an actual network site with instant on devices that your clients are going to associate to. You continue. It asks you what you want to discover. Do you have just access points? Do you have just switches? Or do you have access points and switches on your network? I actually have both, and I'll simply select that radio button and click continue. As I said, I've already got these all connected with internet access. Then when you get to this next screen, it asks you about connectivity, right? So when it asks you about connectivity, it's saying, hey, are you a part of a network that already has an existing gateway? I showed you that I was earlier in that topology, right? I already have my gateway there. Or as I mentioned, if it was a smaller environment, maybe 20 users or so, maybe I'm using the AP11D with multiple ports on it to actually be my gateway. And we do have that capability. But in this case, we've already got a gateway there. And so I'm just going to continue and click OK. Now I want to make sure I've got everything plugged in and connected to the network so that all the devices that are connected here are getting an IP address, right, from the DHCP server on my gateway or DHCP server on the network. And then I also want to make sure that my devices have internet access, and you'll be able to tell that because they will simply be blinking green and orange. And I know you guys can't see that behind me here, but I've got multiple products here and they're all blinking green and orange, meaning that they have access to the Aruba Instant On Cloud portal. So then the next thing I'm going to do is very simple. I'm going to click Find My Device. Now, with the mobile app, there's actually 3 ways of actually discovering a device. It can actually discover devices using the Bluetooth in a wireless access point, and it will discover the devices that are attached to the network. It can also, you can also barcode scan those devices, right? Or they can actually be discovered over the network, right? So there's actually a barcode actually on each one of the devices. You can barcode scan that through via your mobile phone and they'll show up, or it can be over the network. Now I'm having a little bit, looks like a little bit of a challenge here with you guys not seeing it. Oh, there we go. So now it's showing that I've discovered all these devices. Now what I want to do now is simply, I recognize they've all been discovered. Remember I told you that I had a stack, and I can actually click on that and actually see which one's the conductor, which one's the backup for that stack, and see if they're all connected. And now all I want to do is add those devices to the site that I'm getting ready to create. Now I'm going to create a site and I'm going to name it Demo. Enable my keyboard here. Now I'm going to name that site Demo. And I'm going to make my password Aruba just easy 123, right? Check that. Because this password is also going to be the password for access to the wireless network. And you can actually change that later once you get in here, and I'll show you how you can do that. But I'm going to continue with that as my password. And And notice here it asks me, for a country, you're setting up your country and your site name. So I'm going to take the name site off. It adds site onto everything when you're going through this. And I'm going to call it just demo. And this is going to be the primary network for the employee network for that particular site. And you'll see here once this comes up that you'll see those quadrants, just like I talked about earlier, and it will show your network. You'll see the client quadrant as well as the applications quadrant, and then you'll see an inventory. So I'm gonna go again, a little bit of a delay here. Maybe I can pop over and actually see it in the app. I need to go to site management. Actually, I want to connect to another site, and that's my demo site. Yeah, you can see it here. So you can see that. So I'll kind of be alternating back and forth. There we go. Now it's showing up on my app. So, and notice how instantaneous it is between both of those, right? You're getting the notifications right back. If we go to the online devices, they're synchronizing, so meaning they're pulling down the latest version of code as well as the configuration. At some point, these will be all green. But this gives us a good way, our base to get started. And actually, once our network's configured, it'll continue to synchronize as we go and we add different things. It'll synchronize again. So I'm going to go back here, and as I mentioned, so the first thing you want to look for when you come here and you get to this primary page is everything okay? And you can actually click on that, and it tells you everything's okay. There's no problems. If there is a problem, you'll get notified. Potentially, you'll get notified by what product that's with. And then there's the ability to actually run some tests from this page as well. So you've already got your primary network set up. So as I mentioned, you got your 4 quadrants. I always start with the network quadrant because the first thing we're going to do is we got our primary employee network, right? Or if you're at home, it could be your business network at home. Maybe you want to set up a guest for the kids, or if you got a business, you want to set up a guest for guests. And it's real easy to add another network, right? And I come here, I select add a network, and then I select wireless. I'm going to select guest. I'm going to put in a network name, and I'm just going to call it demo guest. Now I could choose to select a password. I'm not. I'm actually just going to leave it open, but notice there's support for both WPA2 and WPA3. We've talked about that in some previous presentations, WPA3 being the latest form of security. We also support Enhanced Open, which is advanced security for open networks for products that support WPA3. If I wanted to use a password, I would fill in all that information here. You can actually configure a guest portal. I'm going to go open. I'm not going to configure a password, but I am going to set up Enhanced Open. And then I'm actually going to customize. I can customize my message. So here it just says, welcome to the guest network. I can actually change that and make it something else. I'm just going to say just welcome to demo network. I can change the font size on that if I choose to. I can actually change the color of that as well. And then mention I can actually go back and actually add, and I can actually add my terms in here as well if I want to have terms. But I'm not going to do that, but I just want to give you an example. And so this is what your guests would see when they come into the environment. If I wanted to add a picture, you can add a picture from your photos or devices that you've actually got here. So I'll just add a picture in there. Here we go. And there's a picture. And it just shows maybe it's a company logo or something like that. So very simple, easy to do, gives you a basic portal so that when users come into your site that are guests, they see something that looks very nice and very professional. So I'm going to click done there. And it's actually creating that configuration. Now I added a guest network. And the nice thing there is in adding that guest network, um, it's an actual separate network from the employee network and it's secure. So notice our employee network is actually a 10 dot something network. This is a 172.16 something network. So a totally different set of addresses. And notice it says there, the way it's configured, that these devices only have access to the internet, right? They don't have access to other networks. And that's real important from a security standpoint. And we set that up by default here. So, and then kind of going down the list of some additional features that are here, I can actually set a network schedule, right, of when I want my network to function. By default, I've got it set for fixed and all day, but I could have it set for variable, meaning I'm setting like 2 times a day that it's actually functional. And or I could maybe just say it's fixed and it's only active between 9 and 5 o'clock Monday through Friday, right? So it would shut off the wireless in that time. Now I'll tell you guys now, we also do this with power as well. So there's a situation where on the weekend nobody's in the office, you can actually, we've got, let's say, access points or security cameras, et cetera, connected to switches supporting PoE. We have the ability to make these same types of settings in reference to power and power devices. So a lot of flexibility with time, network availability, and the ability to save power there. Um, some other things here is bandwidth. You can limit bandwidth usage. Obviously, if you've got guests coming into your environment, maybe you don't want to give them all 1 gig each if you've only got 1 gig total coming in and out of your network, right? So maybe you want to allow them only to be able to download, let's say 25 meg, right? And maybe you only want them to be able to upload 3 meg. So probably not so realistic. Could be, actually, it all depends. But notice you have that flexibility to do that per client. The other option is you can also do it per network. So you see, for a simple SMB product, there's actually a lot of features and functionality built in here. There's also a wireless option to be able to determine which access points you want to use, 2.5 and 5 gigahertz, or maybe you've got IoT devices that only work at 2.4. Maybe you're setting that for a specific group of access points, or maybe you're setting some access points for just 5 gigahertz. This gives you that flexibility. By default, we're actually supporting both here. And then network assignment. So this is showing again which one of those access points you'd actually want to associate this functionality to, or that SSID to. And by default is selected for all. But if we had multiple APs, maybe we're only allowing the guest on the access point that's actually in the lobby, for example. So, and kind of moving to some of the other tabs here. So you've got our applications tab. This is real important. So as I've talked about before in some of the previous presentations, what we've been able to do is actually block some content. So we do application blocking by category. So we have about 3,000 total applications that we have the ability to block. But what we've done is we've broken this down into about 19 different categories. So for example, something like Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn is going to fall under social media. So if I block the social media category, I would block them all. But by default, some of the ones that you can block here based on different networks, whether it's the demo network or the demo guest network, um, I can actually select those. This is kind of showing all the applications and how much traffic is being passed over those apps. But if I wanted to, for example, block some of these specific categories on the demo network, then I could simply select the demo network and then move that button to the left, and it actually has now blocked that access. Maybe I also want to do that for explicit content, and maybe I also want to do that for malicious content as well, right? So I'll do that as well. And I can do that same thing actually, and you'll see here, this is actually showing those that blocked, it moved on as blocked, it moved them all to the bottom, but you can see that they're all being blocked there. And then I can also, if I choose to, actually could do the same for the actual guest network. And there are usually a couple different places you can do this within the app. On the regular through a browser, you can actually select. It's just some check boxes for those networks and for the applications that you're blocking. So it's a little bit different than in here, but still accomplishing the same thing. For clients that are connecting, and I don't have any connecting at the moment, but I'm actually going to connect a device here just so you guys can kind of see what you see there. It may take a second for it to pop up here. There we go. And notice this is Reginald's iPad. So this is my iPad. And so notice it shows that it's one of the devices connected. And there are a couple of different things up here at the top. So I'll kind of walk through. This is what you see related to my iPad. You see what OS it's running. You can actually see what network it's connected to. So it's connected to demo guest, how long it's actually been connected. I can also see the serial number of the device that it's connecting through. So the access point that it's connecting through, which is my AP15. Right, and I can see that the health is good. Now, if I want to dig for more information, or if I choose to actually block this, it's a little bit different layout in the actual web interface. But if I want to actually, if this is a watch client, so for example, you may have something like a server or storage device that's on the network that you want to know if that particular device goes on, then I can simply mark that as a watch client, right? And and so what I would do is actually, in order to do that here, I can come up here and actually I can add it to the watched list. And now it's actually a watch client. So I can receive an email notification, et cetera, now that the device has been set up as a watch client. So if something happens to this particular device, uh, I receive that notification as happening. I can also choose to block devices as well. So blocking is an option. And what happens when you block a device? Let's say you're a parent that has your business network set up at home, but you also have a network for the kids. But and I saw this a lot during the pandemic, but you don't want to give them access to have their PlayStation online during the day. I can simply let that PlayStation connect and then basically block it as a client. Even if they reboot it, it will still not be allowed to connect on the network until you actually went in and actually changed this back. So again, so another good, cool security feature there with this. And then the last little category here for inventory is that last section there. And it's still, it's actually syncing again from some of the modifications that I made earlier. You'll see those go all green in a second. And these are all the devices. Now, if I want to add a device, let's say I've got one area in my house where, or in your office where you don't have a wired connection. This is where I said you can go in and actually add a device that's not associated to the wire. It's simply just plugged into the wall, and it's going to associate back to an AP on the wired network. So this talks about how you extend the network, how to extend the network. That's going to cover, if you click on that, it's actually going to cover showing how to configure the mesh. So I'm going to click on search devices, and sometimes this takes a little bit of time for it to occur. But what you've got is basically that device that I plugged in is going to associate back to the wired access point or a wired access point that's on the network. So it looks like even though I plugged it in, it's kind of going through its cycle and it hadn't gotten to the point where it's doing the green and orange association. Sometimes this can take 2 minutes, or as it says here, it can take up to 5 minutes. But it's just like you did the others, right? You just simply go in, you click add the device, and it's going to associate back to the wired network. And it looks like it's going to take a little bit longer here. So while it's going through that process, I'll actually share some other things with you guys here. So there's some troubleshooting capabilities in here. So if I click on that inventory page, not only can I see my devices, I can also see the actual topology as well and how these devices are all connected to each other. So the first little arrows there to the left, that's my actual gateway that I talked about. It's not an instant on device, so it's not showing up as being manageable from here. But these are my instant on devices here, my stack switches you see down at the bottom, right? You see a switch up here at the top connected to the gateway. And then you can click here to get more information on those. And then you can drill down further and actually bring you to an actual page actually showing the product, and you can actually do configuration from there. So quite a bit here, and it looks like my access point need to be reset here. I think I let it run too long before it got into the discovery mode, so I just unplugged it and plugged it in again. But Julie, I know we only got a couple minutes left, so I'm hoping that maybe it's going to pop up here before we get done. But if there are any questions, maybe I can take some questions out there.
Sure, Reggie, if you'd like to go for questions right now, we can get started.
Yeah, let's do it now. So maybe this will associate by the time before we get done.
Certainly, certainly. Here we go. First question, Reggie. How does Aruba Instant On support integration with other network management platforms?
Yeah, so it really doesn't. I mean, from a cloud perspective, I suppose if you've got some product that does some third-party management, you may get some management features or some monitoring functionality with other management platforms. But for the most part, like the cloud management, we only do cloud management of our product that I'm aware of. And there's also local management on the switches as well, which can be managed from wow, which can also be, it's an option. It can actually be managed from the web interface or can be managed in the cloud. So I'm not aware of anybody else that's supporting it from a management standpoint. As far as us actually supporting managing third-party products, we don't manage third-party products within the Instant On Cloud portal. So you'll get some things will show up like I was showing here on the screen. So for that gateway, even it's an Aruba product, right? But you actually see it get a symbol of something that's there, but not specifically what that product is.
Excellent. Thanks, Reggie. I'll go on to the next one here. Can you describe the management and monitoring capabilities provided by the Instant On app? I know you touched on this. If you could talk about that.
Yeah, so a lot of that's exactly what I'm looking at here. So, basically, so if you go to the inventory page, you can click on that particular device and drill down. And then when you want details, I can go into details and get, and go into advanced LAN parameters and make some modifications or changes there. Maybe in this case, if I wanted to change it to a static IP, if I kind of scroll down the page here, I can select certain ports for actually changing the power for those devices or whether or not there's power actually supplied to that particular port. I can do configurations um, here of different tagged and untagged networks within the product as is actually showing up here. So you can do your basic modifications that you would do. Most of them, there are some things you can do standalone that you can't do within the actual cloud portal, but for the most part, they're pretty much on par from a feature set standpoint. Um, some things, if you're stacking, for example, with the 1960s outside of the cloud portal, you get full stacking capability as opposed to within the cloud portal. You really got products can be seen as one, but they don't provide like true stacking capabilities like distributed link aggregation. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail about that, but essentially, yeah, you know, this is some of the things you can do here.
Sounds very good, Reggie. Would you like me to go on with questions, or do you need to get back to the presentation?
Sure. Keep going.
You got it. Next question here. How does Aruba Instant On support a guest Wi-Fi access and provide a seamless user experience?
Yeah, so that was like the first thing that I set up, and this is again, it's as simple as when I set up the initial network. So if I go back to the main screen here, this essentially is the guest, right? So setting up the guest network was just a matter of you know really just walking through the setup just like you normally would of the employee network, selecting whether or not you're using a password or not, whether or not you want it as open. I chose open. I'm able to set up a customized guest portal as well, and then you configure the options. And then I just simply went to my laptop that I had here, or my iPad, and I typed it in selected that network and typed in actually I didn't even type in the password. I actually just accepted the actual portal and got access. So it's really that simple. There's also now the option, one things that we added recently is you can actually select clients that you want to allow on the network from the beginning. So for example, if I was setting up um, a network, I can actually define which clients I'm actually going to allow.
Sounds great. Here we go with the next question, Reggie. What security features are included in Aruba Instant On to protect the network and connected devices?
Yeah, so I talked about, the initial what we do with the guests is actually put it on a totally separate network and it's firewall from the employee network. There's support for WPA3. There's also that application blocking that I talked about is another solid feature for that as well. And then with the switches, we support DHCP snooping as well as some other things to make sure that we avoid malicious devices from being on the network and accessing those and passing that or propagating that throughout the network. So there's a lot of things here that we've added for an SMB environment that most vendors don't have. I talked about WPA3. We were probably the first ones to have WPA3 support for an SMB customer.
Excellent. Thanks, Reggie. Next question here for you. What are the power requirements for the AIO 1830 PoE switch and the AIO 1960 core stack?
The power requirements in reference to, I'm not sure I'm following that question. So we've got one switch that can be powered using PoE. The others aren't. Maybe they're asking about what the power budget is, maybe, which I think we've got on the. I'd have to go back and actually check, Julie. I'll need to go
No
back.
problem. Not a problem at all. Can I go to the next question for you?
Sure.
Okay, here we go. How does the AP11D differ from other access points in the Aruba Instant On lineup?
Great question. So the AP11D is kind of what we refer to as a hospitality access point. So it's great for going in conference rooms. So it comes with on a desktop stand. It can actually be mounted like to the wall. It actually has 4 built-in Ethernet ports as well. So, and that's how initially I talked about. So one of those is can actually function as a gateway by actually connecting to like your cable modem in your environment, and then connecting to a switch via another port, right? And actually being like a gateway or the firewall for your primary network for smaller environments. It also has the ability to forward PoE. So if you plug it in, it actually has the ability to support attaching another power device like a security camera or perhaps an IP phone to it. So it has a lot of flexibility as far as its capabilities in comparison to the other access points in the environment. The thing about it is kind
Excellent.
of a hospitality access point. Yeah,
Excellent. Okay. I got several more questions. Are you ready to go or?
sure.
Okay. I just needed to know if you are getting back to any more of your presentation, or shall we finish up with questions?
No, no, we can finish up with questions as we're talking here. I see it looks like my AP just associated and is synchronizing, so my mesh AP. So we'll go back and look at the topology here in a bit. But yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay. Let me know if we need to switch this up. But I do got some more questions here. The next one is, do these units have to be pre-configured before going on site?
No, they do not. So you can go on site as long as there's internet access and the DHCP server is actually handing out addresses to the devices. So they're going out associating to the cloud. So everything that I had here um, was basically at the default configuration, right? As I just allowed it to do its thing, and I discovered everything all in one shot. If you want to add devices, it's as simple as what I did with adding the mesh AP. It's the same thing as to whether or not it's wired or wired, or wired or wireless.
Excellent. Thanks, Reggie. Next question here. In network management remote, or do I, oh, excuse me, let me start over. Is network management remote, or do I have to have a unit on site for me to access the network?
No, no, you can access this from anywhere, anytime, as long as you can get access to the internet, right? So you can access the cloud portal or via your mobile phone, as I'm showing you guys. Basically, doesn't make any difference where you are. As a matter of fact, the other nice thing about this that I didn't talk about, that I've talked about it in previous presentations, is from a small managed service provider standpoint for small businesses, or maybe you've got a client that has multiple doctor's offices or dentist offices, you can manage all of those within this app. We can actually manage up to 150 different sites, and that can be, several from, customers that have several sites, and you can manage all those via either your mobile phone or um, on their desktop with cloud access, with web access.
Excellent, Reggie. Plus, you just answered the next question, was how many sites can I manage with one login? And you just talked about that.
Yeah, and another thing with that too, I didn't realize that I had so much stuff that I could show here, Julie. So I was trying to squeeze as much as I could in the 30 minutes. But the other thing too is there's also the ability to actually add additional managers as well. So maybe there's somebody on site that has the capability of doing some management. You may be the primary administrator, but you can simply add someone else as another administrator of the network as well.
I understand. Okay, a couple more questions still yet to go. How
Sure.
many users can I provide access to each network site location?
Yeah, there's really no limit on users. There is a limit on the number of instant-on devices that are supported per site, and when I say devices, that could be APs and or switches together, and that total number is 50. So, I mean, that's a lot of devices, which could be a really, really large site. A lot of that would probably be, out of the scale for SMB type of environment. So, I always tell partners to, be cautious of that, right? You don't want to put this in an environment that's too big. Typically, it's a great fit, for environments where you've got to 150 to 200 users, and occasionally there might be a situation kind of scaling from 250 to 5 that it fits, but that's those are typically not the norm. Usually, our target market for this is at less than 100 user space, but it does have quite a bit of scale, and that is per site. So if you've got multiple sites, as I talked about earlier, I mean, you could have quite a few clients.
Excellent. Last question here, Reggie. Is the add new device feature available via phone or just computer?
No, both. So it's actually available either way, right? So, um, and matter of fact, and my mesh device, as you can see, did show up. And if we look at our topology, we know it's a mesh device because it's dotted lines to that particular product. So, and that means that the green dotted lines is good. Gray dotted lines is not good. All right, that means it's mesh that's disconnected, and a gray solid line meaning that it's wired and not connected. So notice we've got a mesh connection, and that, by the way, it connects over the 5 gigahertz radio, and that 5 gigahertz radio still has the ability to serve clients as well, along with the 2.4 gigahertz radio that's actually in that device.
Reggie, thank you so much for not only sharing such a great presentation with us, but also for answering all of those questions. We had quite a few today. And
Yeah, we did.
thank you to everyone for showing up and allowing all those questions to flow through so that Reggie can answer them. And if anyone has any further questions, you can always, please feel free to contact your sales rep or email us at sales@microcomtech.com. And if you wish to view any of these products or mentioned and shown today, please know that this webinar presentation has been recorded and will be uploaded to our Microcom YouTube channel, so you can view them again and listen to Reggie's all new presentation that he shared with us today. Reggie, thank you so much, and we will be in touch to do this again when you're ready to share the next webinar with us.
Great. Thank you, Julie. And make sure, please follow up on the power question. I want to make sure I got the answer to that.
Certainly will. Certainly will. And thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic day.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.